Into the dungeon. Welcome everyone, this is Arafon playing the DanDan Dungeon Daibouken, the bonus game in Magical Bringer Korona 2. Let's just continue from the last save, which was last week. So yeah, next thing up is 4-6, but 4-6, as I've mentioned, has a lot of things that make it not pleasant, and I don't want to go straight there just yet. So the idea for now is to do some grinding, try and get, especially these two, up a few levels so that they're more in line with the higher level characters. Actually, let me check something. Okay, that's what's giving her seal resist, so I think I'll put these on Korona for now. Wait, the cat shoes. Because Korona keeps getting prevented from using her skills, and I think it's easier to cure it on the healer than it is to cure it on Korona, because the healing is good, but also I'm using offensive skills more regularly. Okay, let's just kick things off with the Korona Legend. An actual all-target skill that Korona learned recently. Sleet spell didn't work, we're not taking much damage, big fiery K with a kind of a bloody noise. And that's a battle dealt with. So yeah, going to be a bunch of grinding this episode, so to try to keep things from getting too monotonous, I thought I'd kind of recap what's happened in the games thus far. Not yet go after those. So, we have Korona, who is the main character. She's the kind of happy-go-lucky pink-haired girl. She's in high school, looks kind of more like she's in junior high. When Korona 1 started, she had this thing where she was trying to summon something. Basically, she's been obsessed with becoming a magical girl basically her entire life. Which, magical girls, that's the thing, like Sailor Moon and whatnot. You transform, you fight evil, you have magical powers, all that. Her dad is basically Indiana Jones, so he's off scouring the world for ancient artifacts and ruins, whatever. Came across this weird tome somewhere, decided to send it to her. I think they said it was from Turkey. Doesn't really matter. So she's trying to do some kind of magic-y thing with that. At first it doesn't really work, it just kind of explodes her room a little. Which is interesting by itself because, I mean, she's doing some kind of weird magical ritual, and if magic isn't a thing, you'd expect it to just not do anything. But that's not what happened. But anyway, she keeps trying and failing to summon something. It gets her mother annoyed at her, because it is causing kind of a disturbance and a mess. Anyway, she gets some feedback from this crate maker she frequents, who is also kind of a conspiracy theorist, UFOs, all that kind of weird stuff. And he suggests making a sacrifice. So she gets a bucket of fried chicken, basically, and some orange juice. And somehow that actually seems to work. And out of her summoning circle comes this magical wand. Oh wait, that's not a wand, it's a 9-foot slab of black steel, which she eventually realizes is a really, really big sword. Korona Legend these. And the sword is a magical talking sword, kind of creeps her out at first, but they end up making a pact because she really wants magic, and he promises magic, so there you go. Gives the sword the name... Well, the usual English pronunciation is Osiris, even though it's written Oshirisu in Japanese. Anyway. They form a pact. She gets a bunch of magic. Everyone's happy, kind of, for a bit. Except things are a little more complicated. First off, there's a bunch of wacky antics when she goes to school. Like running across the rooftops because she's late. suddenly actually knowing how to speak English, despite being a terrible student normally, doing really good in athletic stuff when, again, she's usually terrible at that. And then there's her best friend, Yuka, the purple-haired girl here, who is much calmer and more mature. Yuka knows something's up, but Korona's not sure she wants to talk to her about it because, this whole secret identity thing. And just as she's thinking about it, on the way home, she runs into 3 unusual characters. One of them is Noel, the cat girl here. One of them is Crom, who is the boss of the next floor and is basically a hellhound girl with a big nasty scythe. And one of them is Noel, who looks like, kind of like a grade school girl cosplaying as a vampire, but is actually the demon lord of starvation and death, and yeah. Long story short, Noel has sensed the appearance of the sword, wants its power for herself so she can take over the entire demon realm, and they end up fighting. First off, Korona fights Noel. It's a pretty simple fight. Both of them are kind of just throwing each other at themselves, or throwing themselves at each other, with no real strategy. And Korona wins, which intrigues Noel because, Korona's just this little girl, basically, so for the sword to give her enough power to be able to beat Noel with relative ease, that's promising. So Noel decides to step in and fight herself, and Korona's overconfident and gets her butt kicked, basically. So they kind of back off, and Osiris says, well, let's dip into Raim reserve power. So they do that, they kind of take Noel by surprise. Korona beats her and drives her off, banishing her back to the demon realm for now until she recovers, same as what happened with Noel. And then Crom gets kind of pissed and throws herself into the ring and also gets beaten off. But in the process, Korona's so busy fighting, and the others are caring more about beating her than anything else, that the entire area kind of gets trashed. They're fighting by a train station building, which in Japan especially tends to have a lot of shopping type stuff in front of it, so kind of either an actual shopping mall or more like an open all strip mall kind of thing. So that whole area gets kind of trashed. So Korona realizes how much damage happened, escapes the rooftops, is wondering what to do next when someone flies in. Which, again, that's interesting. You have people flying under their own power, apparently. This person is Playa, who she's not in the party right now, but she's the very serious blue-haired girl that I've been having lightning strike everything. And Playa is a magical girl who specializes in lightning and, again, very serious, no nonsense. Is not happy about the place being trashed. Korona kind of runs off rather than fight her. Nope, Yuka's gaining a level, 5 health, 3 mana, 1 attack, which is good for her, 3 defense, 3 spirit, also good, 2 luck, no speed. Yuka is the slow character of the party. But yes, after fighting them and realizing that they're out to get her, or at least her sword, Korona decides, yeah, probably don't want to tell Yuka, don't want to get her involved in this. But of course, the next day at school, Korona runs into this blue-haired girl who's year behind her. Very serious, no-nonsense type, student council, all that. They're kind of... They take a moment to be like, wait, do I know you? And then right at the same time, they're like, you! Because of course Korona is Korona, and Subaru, the girl, is Playa. Subaru being the Japanese name of the Pleiades. It's a nice thematic name. So they kind of talk things out, agree to keep each other's secret. Playa agrees to let her go for now, if she'll stop trashing the town, after Korona explains herself. So, of course, on the way home, Niall shows up again, having recovered quickly, because that's one of the specialties of beast-type demons. Quick regeneration. They fight in a residential area and kind of trash the area, so Playa shows up. She insists on fighting Korona. Korona fights her off, but it's kind of worn out. It's not easy having all these fights one after another, and furthermore, recovering magic is kind of an issue, because the human world is not exactly rolling in magical power. And that's where the plot splits in three. So, complication of things is that Korona 1, the first game, is an adult game, has adult content, and basically the gist of the adult content is the excuse for it is that, well, you need to recover your magic, and that's the fastest and easiest way to do it. But weirdly enough, the plot branches in 3 when that starts becoming an issue, because on the one path, well, first of all, Osiris basically gauges Korona's readiness for whatever may come. And if he's satisfied that she's okay and will be fine, they kind of let it go for then and don't deal with it until later. If not, then he explains the whole magic running short thing, and this could be an issue, especially because if it gets critically low, then, well, it's like if you're starving, basically. You'll end up doing things you wouldn't normally consider to deal with the need. So at that point, that branch goes into 2, where either he can help her deal with her urges, or she can try to do it on her own, but she's, again, very childlike and innocent, has no idea what she's doing, and doesn't. So basically, depending on how that goes, she either ends up being satiated for the moment, but ending up running out of magic after fighting Player later on and basically jumping her. Or she's critically low going to school the next morning and ends up with Yuka doing stuff and things. Or it becomes critical after he ends up fighting Niall again and they end up doing stuff. And because of that one decision, the whole plot branches in those 3 different directions, but the overall thing goes mostly the same. She ends up fighting Niall a few more times, Crom again, Crom being disguised as Yuka for that battle, with varying degrees of actually fooling her. Basically, if you're on the Yuka branch, Yuka shows up in the middle of it and kind of dispels the illusion and nothing bad happens. If you're on the Subaru branch, then Korona has to fight her with a penalty to her attack, I think, but is otherwise okay. And if you're on the 3rd branch, it's critically bad and things go so bad that Osiris basically has to unchain Korona's raw id, which manifests in the form of Dark Korona, who is basically everything Korona isn't, and yet also not. Whereas Korona is very pure and innocent and doesn't want to hurt anyone. And Dark Korona being pure id just once. So power, gratification, recognition, playing around, having fun. Doesn't care about consequences. And then there's this whole thing where Korona has to break out with the last dregs of Osiris' power and fight her off. In the Yuka branch, meanwhile, Korona finds out that Yuka is, as the Shrine Maiden of a major shrine, actually has mystical powers of her own, which she's felt obligated to keep from Korona because, that's the way these things go. And she's felt guilty about that the whole time because she knows about Korona's dream to have magical powers. But they end up basically coming out to each other as far as the whole magic thing goes, and that whole thing goes a lot better for them. They get closer. And on the Subaru path, Korona ends up finding out that Playa's powers are not magic at all. He basically, as Osiris hits opponent, he drains some magic from them. And as he's doing that, when they hit Playa during combat, they get very little out of it. At first, that can be kind of hand-waved off as, she's not seriously fighting. She doesn't really want to hurt Playa, who is, after all, only human. But after the stuff and things happen between them, the thing with doing the hanky-panky is that you recover magic, and the more magic the person you're doing it with has, the more magic you get out of it. And Asir says quite bluntly that what they got from her is entirely consistent from what you would get from an ordinary human with no magic whatsoever. And yet Playa's flying around, commanding lightning and all that, so what's up with that? Here, Nyal's gaining level, 12 health, 4 mana. 2 attack, 1 defense, 3 speed. She is a speed specialist. 2 luck. Anyway, they meet Subaru's uncle, who is young and kind of, Korona thinks he's really hot. I don't know if he's really my type, but kind of a pretty boy. But also really smart and diplomatic in ways that Subaru is sometimes not. Subaru wants to be very self-sufficient and the best at everything, but she can be rather bad at tact as a result. Anyway. But you find out that the whole thing with Subaru is she's not really magic, even though the whole magical girl thing, it's all advanced nanotechnology. So that's kind of neat. But in any case, regardless of which route you're on, you end up fighting Yao and Crom again. Both of them together. Depending on which story path you're on, it goes a little differently. If you're on the Yuka path, Korona fights with Yuka, which gives her a substantial defensive advantage, and also the ability to reflect some of their damage back at them, which you see in this game in the form of Yuka reflecting some damage she takes back at enemies. Now, if you're on the Subaru path, Korona fights with Playa, who gives her a speed advantage and blocks attack from one side. And if you're fighting on the other attack, Osiris, in the wake of the whole incident with Dark Korona, has basically gone into hibernation to recover and has entrusted Korona with the entirety of his power for that time, so Korona herself is stronger there. And honestly, she's more stronger like that than she is with backup on the other two routes. In any of those cases, she ends up winning the battle. Niall and Crom are defeated, but then Noel shows up. Noel wants to fight, but not right away because you're kind of tired from that. And she wants the fight to be interesting. Aside from just wanting the power of the sword, she's also rather bored. And yeah, she wants a fair fight to keep things interesting as possible. So whichever path you're on, you're given some time to kind of sit back and recover. Again, on whichever path you're on, you end up fighting Noel again later. Whether it's with a powered-up Korona, or Korona with Yuka's backup, or Korona with Playa's backup. On the Yuka and Playa routes, you just fight Noel with them. It's more of a fair fight version of the original battle with her, which makes it tough but fair. So in any of those cases, they win, but then stuff happens afterwards. On the Yuka route, the sword from the shrine that Yuka is using to kind of partition off a section of space so they don't break anything in the real world, kind of goes renegade, decides he wants to destroy Osiris after hearing about Osiris's backstory, which is basically that he was created thousands of years ago by an ancient civilization as a weapon to destroy the gods, basically. Never ended up being used because the gods didn't like the whole thing and trashed the whole Mu civilization before that could happen. But yeah, the short of it is that the sword possesses Yuka and Korona has to fight them. And is very insistent on not hurting Yuka, just going after the sword. which actually impresses Osiris. It's very hero-ish of her. But that happens, they basically obliterate the sword, Yuka comes back to herself, they make it out of the pocket dimension safe and sound. That's Korona legend just because of how many of these are. And everything is all good. Until next time. Because here you have 3 girls with magical or similar powers in one place. Fate's not going to let that sit around. On the Subaru path, you have to fight Playa at full power with extra stuff thrown in because, again, Playa's very self-sufficient. Takes it personally when someone is able to outdo her. And that's partly because of her backstory. Her parents died when she was young in a plane crash. So she's basically had to take care of herself, has not really trusted anyone. And that's not good for her any better than it is for anyone else. But she's been very insistent on being able to outdo Korona. At whatever it costs her. Which is not advisable, but she can be very, very stubborn. Alright, granulation on these. And let's throw in a reverse gravity. So there's that whole battle. Korona does eventually prevail in a rather annoying fight with all kinds of chaotic nonsense going on. And there's another split at the end of the battle, actually, because you get one of those optional things where you can choose to do a power attack. So in that battle, if you do the one at the very end of the fight, Korona destroys the headband, which houses Playa's nanomachines, and destroys the whole Pleiades system, leaves her as just an ordinary human being with no special powers. And there's a brief epilogue that's kind of a downer ending, and it's non-canon as of this game. If you choose not to, then you have a more conventional ending where they kind of make up, and everything's pretty good. Where things get really interesting is on the third story path, where if you're fighting Noel with Korona at full power, there's some shenanigans thrown in where Korona's mom gets hit by a falling lamppost after her fight with Yell and Crom damaged the park. And she's in critical condition and not going to make it. So Noel basically shows up to her and says, "You know, I can fix that, but I want a serious, no-holds-barred, all-out fight with you, nothing held back. Let's make this interesting." So they end up having this epic battle in space where Korona is at full power in a way that she isn't anywhere else. Noel is using her full power as Exceed Noel that you don't see anywhere else in the game. And yeah, it's just big, epic, intense battle. And in the end, Korona wins, Noel fixes her mom up. They retire to her room to recover magic together, which is kind of skeevy, considering Noel looks like she's about 10. But in the aftermath of that, Noel decides she wants to stick around and learn more about Korona and what she's like and all that, so she basically invites herself to be a stay-in, like kind of a homestay guest, in the guise of a foreign exchange student. Supposedly from Israel. So Korona 2 kind of takes all that and retcons all 3 story paths into one unified storyline, where basically all the major battles and event happen. So you've got the battle between Korona and Yuka with the sword possessing Yuka. You've got the all-out battle with Playa under the moonlight. You've got the all-out battle with Noel in space, and especially you have Noel staying at Korona's house as a freeloading guest, basically. So that's where Korona 2 starts. That starts off, Korona and Noel are fighting in the Arctic because Noel wants to play around and try out new special moves. Korona kind of humors her, but they do it mostly in places where they won't damage things too much. So in the aftermath of things, as things are getting established, you find out about this comet is approaching Earth. It's like a once every 1,000 years or something like that. Maybe a few hundred, doesn't matter. Any point. This comet that shows up only every so often is approaching, so there's some excitement about that in the news. Meanwhile, as Korona's going around town trying to beat the heat because it's like 102 degrees Fahrenheit, she runs into Playa, who's actually hanging out with some friends for once. Or Subaru, rather. Subaru is her normal... It's her actual name. Playa is her magical girl persona. She goes and stops in with Yuka, who's... Again, she lives at a shrine. Major shrine on the edge of the town. Like Shinto style. Which is kind of built with the architecture with weather in mind, so it feels a lot cooler than it actually is because of good airflow and all that. But anyway, on her way back, she runs into Yao or Crom, I forget which, who mentioned they're looking for some kind of green little demonling. And the two of them end up getting invited to dinner when they stop in to report to Noel at Korona's house. But when Korona's out and about later, she runs into this little green-haired girl. Kind of doesn't put two and two together right away until the girl gets very antagonistic and they end up fighting after the girl pulls a prank on her. So that girl is the fallen angel Belzebuth, a new character in Korona 2, who is an immature prankster. But yeah, Korona ends up fighting her. Noel shows up after the fighting because... Oh, as she's fighting Belzebuth, Playa cuts in. Because the two of them apparently met before. And, you know, Playa having this whole magical girl justice thing going on is not happy about Korona picking on this poor defenseless little girl. But in the aftermath of them fighting, Noel steps in and convinces Belzebuth to come quietly back to the castle in the Demon Realm, where apparently she is being held. She's not supposed to go out on her own, supposedly for her own safety, but it seems like there's something more to that. But we get this whole thing where they launch into the whole storyline where Noel invites Korona, along with Yuka and Subaru, to come visit her castle in the Demon Realm over summer vacation. Which, okay, sure. So they do that. That's where we meet Raim, the vampire head maid, who is very courteous but also a bit mischievous. As they're getting settled in, they take a trip to the beach, where another unexpected guest shows up, the Demon Lord Leviathan of the Great Deep, who tends to talk in a very slow and sleepy kind of fashion, and also likes to greet every people in various different languages. You know, the oceans, they're all around the world. Why wouldn't she know, like, 20 different languages? But, long story short, a bunch of other things happen, but the short of it is that the comet turns out to be a sign from the heavens that it's time for an apocalypse. Go wipe out humanity. And this time the ones chosen to wipe out humanity are Noel, as the strongest of the demon lords, Leviathan, or Levia for short, as the next strongest, and also there. And Crom backs them up because Crom is loyal to Noel and everything. Someone leveled up, I'm not sure who right now. 8 health, 4 mana, 2 attack, 2 defense, 2 speed, 1 luck, 1 spirit. Okay, let's see Raim's health. We have a 1702. Okay, that was Korona. Alright. So basically, Korona, with the help of her companions, goes to the tower where all the power of the demon was coalescing, fights through Grom, fights through Leviathan, fights through Exceed Noel. The two of them fighting at full strength for the first time in a long time. They do play fights, but not serious battles. Anyway, what do we have here? So about 100,000 to level 28, about 30,000 to 27 for her, about 21,000 to 23, and about 60,000. Okay. But yeah, Korona fights through everyone, stops Noel. Noel admits no, she doesn't really want to fight humanity. Leviathan kind of seconds that because they've gotten to know each other while they've been visiting. So the three of them trying to join their power and blast the combat out of the sky. Basically raising a big middle finger to the gods. If you want to hype out humanity, do your own dirty work, basically. And that's it, story concluded, everything's great. Except then there's another story starring Subaru. So we get to see things from her perspective, how she ran into Belzebuth while she was out patrolling the city. Ended up basically taking her in. The fight with Korona when that whole thing is happening and Belzebuth goes back to the castle. And Subaru decides to join them to basically check on Belzebuth, make sure she's okay. But in addition to seeing things from a different perspective, we get to see the Belzebuth Alchemy Lab. Belzebuth apparently is named after a demon that was good with alchemy. And it turns out she's pretty good with it herself. She manages to power up Playa's nanotechnology system with alchemy to get it to use magic. Basically lets her bypass her previous limits of how much energy she can charge. So in this storyline, when Korona and Playa end up fighting because reasons, Playa actually wins. That never happens. And Korona says she's okay with it, and she wants to be, but it's a shock to her. She always wins. Playa never wins. And the whole thing kind of wakes up the dark Korona inside her enough that the gods notice this, and they're like, wait a minute. There's something here that's stronger, and there's a dark power here that's stronger than Noel. So basically they interfere a little. Korona flips into Dark Korona mode. Dark Korona gets the call to wipe out humanity, and she basically says to the gods, what, you think I'm just going to do what you want? She blasts the comet out of the sky solo. She takes Noel kind of by surprise, but incapacitates her, has her bedridden. Playa tries to fight her off, but it doesn't work too well. Kind of regroups at the castle, and we have the situation where basically Noel and Crom are trying to fight her off, but they can only do that for so long, and Playa realizes it's up to her. So she has to, one way or another, find a way to stop Dark Korona. As she goes out, kind of goes all out, takes it very seriously, and it looks like that she has the upper hand after a difficult fight. But Dark Korona is not the type to go down easily. She really doesn't want to go back into what she calls that dark place, where she's kind of there as part of Korona, but not in charge. So she does the whole thing, sore loser thing, where she basically like, well, if I don't make it out of this, no one's making out of this, kind of goes overcharging with multiple blasters and saturates everything with energy, and Playa kind of gets in the way of that to keep the area from being trashed, but that's a lot of energy to take even if you're powered up with nanotechnology and magic and all that. So it's looking bad for her, but it gets one of those things where she hears everyone calling out to her and gets encouragement from Osiris and maybe Osiris, but definitely Korona and Yuka and Belith and the demons back at the castle and her uncle back at the human realm and even her departed parents. So kind of in a desperate attempt to make something out of nothing, she basically channels all of that energy into her Voltic Blade attack and gets this massive energy sword that, yeah, Dark Korona can't handle that. So she's taken down. Unfortunately, Playa spends everything she has on that, so she's falling from the sky. And she's caught by an angel as she's falling unconscious before she hits the ground, but that doesn't make sense. We're in the demon realm. What's an angel doing here? And the angel turns out to be Belith, but wait, Belith is a fallen angel with black wings and all that, and she definitely saw angelic white wings. So you have what kind of feels like a sequel hook there, but it doesn't really go anywhere. There's a bit of after story with Belith settling in, living with Subaru and her uncle, because Noel gives Subaru permission to take Leia back with her. And then Raim ends up showing up, but that's really a side thing. Anyway, what leads into this thing with the whole dungeon crawling adventure is there's this labyrinth underneath Belzebuth Castle. During the main story, you're told, this is dangerous and full of monsters, don't go here. And you just never go here. But with their fun being cut short with the whole thing with the comet and all, Noel decides in kind of an epilogue, which we're doing here, that let's go have some fun in this labyrinth here. We'll set up some tricks and traps. We'll have all of us. Korona can go in by herself, and then everyone else will be set up as bosses on each floor. You get to someone, you beat them. As a boss, they join your party. So that's basically what's going on here. The first boss was Yuka. The main thing with Yuka is she has a lot of defense, and Korona at that time doesn't have much options in the way of either offense or healing. But yeah, once you get her to join, you have a tank and a healer with you, which helps greatly. Okay, Noel is gaining another level. 11 health, 4 mana, 3 attack, 1 defense. Yeah, Noel is more of an attacker, more speed and luck, not as much defense. 1 spirit, 3 luck. Again, also not good on spirit, because Noel doesn't really get magic attacks. Yeah, let's do a legend just because there's so many of them. Alright, Noel is still paralyzed. I should do something about that. Yeah, second floor we get Playa, who is, of course, very fast and can hit fairly hard, but doesn't have much in the way of staying power. And of course, she joins the party as basically your black mage. With a lot of speed and very good defense, but also good firepower. Next floor is full of pranks and tricks, and we get to the end of that and fight Belith, who joins as a character with low stats, but some interesting abilities, and also a passive that makes Playa stronger. So it's very handy to have both of them in the party at once. And really, there's not much reason to use Belith if you're not using her with Playa. Alright, Korona Legend. Floor after that was Njal. So yeah, that was 4. Yeah, 4-1 was Yuka, 4-2 is Playa, 4-3 is Belith, 4-4 was Njal. And Njal kind of shows up early. She got bored waiting in the boss room, apparently, and goes up and fights as a mini-boss before going and being the boss. And she was a nuisance of an opponent because she has innate regeneration as an enemy. I think it was 5% of her health per round, which is pretty significant when you don't have that much way in offensive options. Anyway, I think this was Yuka, it said, gaining level. 8 health, 6 mana. Yeah, definitely Yuka. 1 attack, 3 defense, 1 speed. Nice to get. 3 spirit, 2 luck. And we got a chocolate crate. Check how everyone's doing. Korona's about 76,000 out. Yuka's about a full 100,000. Y'all's around 70,000, since she did just ruffle recently. And Raim is about 30,000. I think she might learn something at level 25. Many of the characters do. But yeah. Yao was on the previous floor, and on this floor we had Raim, who is just dangerous. No particular special tricks, but dangerous. So we barely squeaked through that fight, so definitely want to power up a little more before going to the next floor. Which, as I've mentioned, it has some nasty stuff going on. It has a thing where you can't really come back once you've gone there, at least not easily. So I want to make sure we're ready. Side note, if you're interested in this game and want to get it for yourself, that could be kind of problematic. Because as far as I know, it's not available legitimately digitally. I think it was just sold in hard copy. I don't even remember where and when I got it. And as far as I can tell, the circle that made it has just not there anymore. I can't find them on the internet. Their website is in the Internet Archives, but again, there doesn't seem to be a live site anywhere I can find. I don't know if there's any availability for this, except if you download it from somewhere. It's kind of a gray area. In my view, is that anything that you can't get, if you can't buy legitimately, it should be fine to just get it however you can. But that's not necessarily what the law says. Anyway. Back to dungeon crawling and fighting things for levels. Okay, one of those, 4 of those. Let's throw in another legend and head back to the save point. That should take out the doll and one of the slimes. Alright, and I might as well recap passive abilities too, in the RPG we're playing here. Korona functionally has 2. First of all, the one you see in her character screen is the through the power of the pact with the Cirrus, she recovers magic points every time she makes a normal attack. It's every 20 damage she does, she'll recover 1 mana. That only works for normal attacks, not special attacks, but it's still useful. Now, her other passive ability, effectively, is her weapon. Her weapon being the Demon Sword Osiris. So she is stuck with that as her weapon, or him, rather, as a weapon, which is not a bad thing. Osiris is a powerful weapon, and just gets more powerful as the game gets on. His attack power at any given point is 2 plus twice Korona's level. So if Korona's level, I think 26 now, that puts his attack power at 54. Which is respectable. And again, he just keeps getting stronger. 27, so twice that's 24, or 54 plus 2 is 56. As you can see right there from her equipment. It does mean she can't use a shield, but she does have pretty good innate defense power. Let's check the item dictionary just quickly to see how other weapons are. So the pipe there is 20. Yuka's sword is 50. That's a very special weapon. And also 20 MP and immunity to instant death, which is nice. The strongest thing I have right now that isn't that... Yeah, Iron Claws that Noel is using that were a random drop are 60. So Osiris is almost as strong as that already, and we'll get there in another level or two. Whereas those will stay 60 forever. Yuka's passive ability is her Reflect. Basically, anytime she takes physical damage, a portion of that will be reflected back at the attacker. I think it's 1/4. So it's not a lot, but it's enough to make a difference sometimes. She also just has really high defense to begin with, so that makes her very good for survivability. Alright, Bob down. Playa's passive ability was her stubbornness, basically. She has a stand ground thing where once per battle, if she gets knocked out, no, she doesn't. She survives with 1 health. Also, in her abilities, she has a charge ability that lets her recover. I think on average it's 1/5 of her maximum MP. And of course, she's the only character so far besides Korona's Korona Legend, which is really expensive, that has an attack. Well, no. Raim has one too, but as I was saying, Playa's Thunder Discharge is the first all-enemy attack you get, and it's still one of the strongest. Yeah, Raim's Reverse Gravity is alright, but it's not great. Korona's Korona Legend is also strong. I think it's based on her attack power exactly, so it's the same damage as a regular attack, ignoring any weakness or resistance the enemy might have to slashing, because normal attacks are non-elemental. Now, Raim's Reverse Gravity is a bit weak, but it's also not as expensive. She's faster than Korona. But yeah, Thunder Discharge is pretty cheap at 15 SP. Playa's speed is ridiculous, so it's a preemptive strike basically guaranteed. And Playa has the ability to recover her own magic pretty easily. So you can spam that pretty well, which you can't as much with these other attacks. Anyway. Bella's passive ability, as I mentioned, is she makes Playa stronger when they're both in the party at once. Alright, I've got to heal Korona. So, I think it was each level Belzebuth has gives 1.2% bonus to Playa's stats. So at level 20, that's a 24% bonus. At level 50, that's a 60% bonus. That really does add up. Especially in a game like this where the damage formula is basically... it's a variant on attack minus defense. There'll be multipliers thrown in there, but... Didn't mean to do that twice. That's okay, save points right nearby. Anyway, the point is enemy defense or spirit, if it's a magic attack, gets subtracted from the damage you're doing. So if, for instance, you double your power, that's going to more than double your damage. Now let's say your base damage is 80, the enemy has 60 resistance, you're doing 20 damage. But if you double that 80 to 160, suddenly you're doing 100 damage. Oh, she took one out. 2 of them out. Nice. Oh yeah, even relatively small gains to your stats can have a big effect. The downside to that, of course, is that Belzebuth herself is fairly pathetic. She has poor stats and they don't grow well. So her normal attack is basically useless. She has some spells that are not bad, but not great. Unless the enemy is specifically weak against them, like Raim was. But, long story short, other than boosting Playa's stats, Belzebuth is often a liability. Nyal's passive makes her very useful for exploration. Nyal has a trap disarming ability. So on many of the chests you find, and sometimes just on specific spots, you'll run into a trap. The trap, you hit the trap does a thing, so the trap may try to damage everyone, it may try to cause MP damage, it may try to inflict status effects, it may reset your map, which is very annoying. It may cost the party some money, which is less annoying, but still not great. So, the things that are targeted towards individual characters, each character has a chance to avoid that based on their speed and luck, I think. The things that are party-wide, if the trap goes off, it just has its effect. Unless Nyal is in the party, because Nyal will attempt to disarm traps, again based on her speed and luck. If Nyal disarms a trap, it just doesn't do anything. No one has to do their saving throw against the trap damage if it's individual. You don't lose any money if it's the money trap. You don't lose your map progress if it's the map trap. Raim is gaining level. 8 health, 5 MP, 1 attack, 2 defense, 3 speed, 4 spirit, and 2 luck. And she learned energy drain, so that is something new. And I got a Taiyaki. Raim, like Korona, effectively has 2 passive abilities. The one you'll see on her character screen is that she can wield 2 one-handed weapons at the same time. So she's currently equipped with, I think, a rapier and a lead pipe, or something along those lines. I'd have to check. Point is, 2 weapons at once. Let's see what's energy drain. Okay, energy drain is a single target attack. I think that's physical damage, and it also has absorb blood, or suck blood. So that will mean she will heal when she uses this. So let's try it out on that doll. Energy drain. Nice little animation there. 89 damage. That's somewhere in the neighborhood of her normal attack, I think. And she recovers some health, so I think she's around 120, she's up to 160, so... I believe that's half the damage she inflicted. Not a great ability, but it is a vampire signature thing. And it's also pretty quick. Because Raim does have good speed. Actually, I think there has to be a damage bonus on that. Yeah, because her attack is not great, even with 2 weapons. Actually, let's check. Can she use the Iron Claw? She can, and that would actually be better for her because the one-handed weapons are relatively weak at the moment. Yeah, let's switch her to an Iron Claw. Now, you cannot use a 2-handed weapon and a 1-handed weapon at the same time. Yeah, equipment, I think she has the best stuff available already. Okay. So that brings her almost up to Nyal's attack power. Yuka, despite her superior weapon, is lagging behind because she just doesn't have much attack innately. But if you look at her defense, she's at 105, Korona is at 63, and these two are in the 50s. But she's so slow. Anyway. Do a little more fighting, head back to the save room, and think about heading downstairs next time. Do a reverse gravity. Yeah, reverse gravity is a magic attack, which means it's powered by Raim's spirit and resisted by enemy spirit. While energy drain is a physical attack, so it's powered by Raim's attack power and resisted by enemy defense power. And these are running away. Yeah, these are a lot less annoying when Playa is in the party because, first of all, Playa is faster than them. Second of all, they're weak against lightning, so Playa can just wipe them all out. But for now, I think I want to stick with this party. I think they'll be more useful on the next 4. It's, at least at first, just for durability, if nothing else. Yeah, Raim and y'all are more durable than Belzebuth and Playa. And Raim does also have a healing skill, which isn't as good as Yuka's, but it's something supplemental. Alright, 38,000 for her. 60-some for her. 30,000 for her. And a while for her. Yeah, Niall is pretty behind because I've left her behind for a while. Yep, we got some dodges. That's nice. Oh, it's nice when we dodge. It's not nice when they dodge. Yeah, dodging algorithm is a bit weird in this game. So only enemies have hit rate, only enemies have evade rate. So the accuracy of your attacks depends on how much evasion the enemy has. And that's it. And how often you dodge depends on how much accuracy the enemy has. Except it's slightly more complicated than that, because if you're defending, you get a bonus to evasion. But base values anyway. It's based on the enemies, and not on you. You don't have anything you can do to raise your evasion or hit rate. Similarly, damage algorithms are a bit weird because for enemies, spirit resists magic, defense resists physical, but for player characters, defense resists everything. Spirit powers magic, it resists some status effects, but it does nothing to resist magic damage. Anyway, that was moderately productive. We got a few levels. 23, 25, 2 27s. Yeah, I think next time we'll try the next 4 and see how that goes. And until then, this has been Arafalm playing the DanDan Dungeon Daibouken. It's not Doki Doki. Doki Doki is literature clubs and H games. Yeah, that'll be it for this week. Come back next week if you're interested in more. Check the archives if you're interested in what's come so far, or in the previous games that lead up to this, or in anything else that might be there. Until then, enjoy your weekend. I'm gonna head out this afternoon, try and get some of those Mega Lucaria raids in.